Hey, you true believers. Chris Mack coming at you today with Flashpoint Beyond, issue 5. And I gotta say, I was really excited to read this book for one particular reason. Well, two. One of them being that we get to return to the Flashpoint Batman, where he was still a hero instead of kind of becoming the villain that he was during the whole Tom King era of Batman, which I'm not gonna talk about. Anyway. But now after I've read this book has absolutely pissed me off. Like I was kind of thinking, oh, I'll go back and read the rest of, the first 4 issues and then there's one more after this. I don't care anymore. First things first, we went over Justice League number 75, which was leading into Dark Crisis, right? And there everyone was hyping this up, saying, the death of the Justice League is going to die. We all knew that was crap. Because immediately after Justice League 75 and they jumped into Dark Crisis, I read the first issue. We find out that the Justice League is trapped in another dimension. And from what I understand, Dark Crisis is still going on. I think the last issue is supposed to be in December. But here we are, issue 5 of Beyond Flashpoint, which is supposed to be a tie-in or an aftermath of Dark Crisis. And that's one trope that both big comics industries need to do. You need to stop releasing aftermath books while you're still in the throes of your main event. Because right here, 2 days after Dark Crisis, we celebrate today the return of the Justice League, who were believed dead following an attack by what Mr. Terrific of the Justice Society was referring to as the Great Darkness. This negates everything that's going on right now, in my personal opinion. I know there's supposed to be some big things happening, and we're going to get into another thing here in a second. But what happens is this book starts out with Mr. Terrific on this talk show, and they get into this thing about the multiverse, the Omniverse. Now, I'm going to say right here, when each comic continually, let me rephrase that, or not rephrase, but let me reiterate, continually talks about the Omniverse, the multiverse. If that's all we're going to focus on, then why the hell do I care about buying individual hero books? If we're going to constantly focus on how the Omniverse is supposed to shape the Prime universe, the one that's supposed to give birth to the multiverse, who cares? Why do I want to care about reading Batman Monthly, Superman Monthly, Green Lantern Monthly if it's just going to constantly change? And here's where I kind of want to make my point. So we kind of touch on the Dark Multiverse and all the other ones that they kind of throw back to the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was done for a good reason back in the day. And then there's just been so many, leading, of course, into reboots. If you remember, when Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, yeah, it was sort of a soft reboot. Like, it was a retelling of Batman's origin, Jason Todd's origin, stuff like that. And then, kind of personas changed. But if you remember, the book's numbering didn't change. Like, I can't remember numbers off the top of my head. I'm not that much of a whiz. But let's just say, for example, you would go from, let's say, and this is just an example, make fun of me down in the comments, but let's say we're going to go Batman 300. And that was post-Crisis. And then Crisis on Infinite Earths happens. Next issue, Batman 301. You can kind of see, and what I liked too, is how during that time period, you would kind of still see like a post-Crisis Batman on a pre-Crisis Batman on a post-Crisis Earth, and you kind of start to see how the tone starts to change to a more darker Batman. And it just kind of like showing how the universe is kind of catching up with itself, so it felt organic. But here, I mean, look at this. as they're going into, she's like, I've heard your Cord Talks talk about Ted Cord, so not TED Talks, Cord Talks, whatever. Look at all this reading. If you haven't read Dark Crisis, if you haven't read Justice 75, if you haven't read the first 4 issues of this book, if you haven't read Scott Snyder's run on Justice League with the what was that wall called? The Infinite Wall or whatever, the thing that got broken with Perpetua that led to Dark Knight's death metal. And if you hadn't read Year of the Villain, oh my God, it's so much to take in. Like, I've met people who said one reason that they don't get into comics is because it's so convoluted, and they're referring to just the original Crisis, the Silver Age leading into the Bronze Age. Now think about modern people getting into these books, and they have to think about the New 52, they have to think about Rebirth, they have to think about metal, they have to think about death metal, they have to think about Future State, they have to think about Infinite Frontier, or whatever that was called. And then they have to think about the whole Justice League thing with the wall, whatever that wall was called that was broke, that broke the universe, etc., so forth. And then again, all these ascensions, Wally West ascending to be the new Doc Manhattan, and there was a couple of others that I can't remember off the top of my head, but and here again, I haven't read the first 4 issues, so I don't know if they've really explained this, but look at all this reading you have to do. Like, they're drawing diagrams and just talking. I mean, here, at its core, the Omniverse and its multiverse are conceptual in nature, while hypertime is emotional. Hypertime can be unpredictable, it can be violent, it remains unexplored. Therefore, hypertime is never stagnant because it reacts and changes with us, perpetually growing and splitting off into endless numbers of timelines. At every major personal crossroad, a choice is made, and at this point in time, great importance that timeline can split off. When that happens, new timelines are born within hypertime, and unlike the parallel Earths that come and go like a Tinder date, these alternate timelines forever exist. Hypertime can be unpredictable, and then that's where the Time Masters come in. And then you got to know about Time Masters. We study temporal phenomena with hypertime. When we do it, we do our best to police it. And then we have to talk about all the people that have broke time throughout the years. Alexander Luthor, Flash during Flashpoint, Dr. Manhattan, and you have to kind of understand Watchmen and know that Doc Manhattan was the reason for the change in the New 52. So you got to make sure that you've read Doomsday Clock. And then we get another diagram. And while the skies turn red for all the witness with the Omniverse there is under siege by the various international despots, the crisis of involving hypertime remains hidden from the public. The everyday world has little or no awareness of the various wars over time because in the aftermath, time passes over them. And then we finally get a little bit of action. We hear blam blam, rip, they're inside. And the one thing here is they kind of show, I'm assuming these are all events that are going to be leading up with this new, again, after Dark Crisis, there's supposed to be this reboot to DC Universe. And the only reason I have some inkling of interest is the focus on Marv Wolfman and George Perez's New Teen Titans with Dick Grayson at the front. But the way that they're kind of stylizing Dick, I'm hoping beyond hope that they don't ascend him to something higher. Instead, just let Nightwing be Nightwing. But I mean, look at all this stuff. Who's hunting the Time Masters? The true Black Adam will show no mercy. Fall of the Justice League, Rise of Legacy League, the Legions of the World. The only thing here that I will laugh is how they say 5G averted, because when they started talking about 5G, nobody wanted it. And 5G's, like a lot of the ideas of 5G that got scrapped, some of them remained, and that's what Future State became. And even though Future State was rushed, there were some good books in there. I will say that Dark Detective was good. Even though I wasn't big on the art style, the Gotham, the one with Red Hood, that was kind of good. The Aquaman was awesome. But it didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Because all it did was lead into... the other person that ascended there was at the end of Death Metal. Diana, Wonder Woman. She ascended to create, to fix that multiverse, future state happen, and then infinite frontier. Oof, oof, oof. So much information that I'm thinking, okay, as I was reading this, I was like, okay. And one of the primary reasons I picked up this book is because it kind of leads, and I just said this at the beginning, leading back into the Thomas Wayne Flashpoint in his universe, not a villain, when he came to this universe, and da-da-da-da-da-da. We get Raz Al Ghul. Yes, Raz Al Ghul. If you ever watch, and people always keep saying Raz Al Ghul. If you all go back and watch interviews with like Neil Adams and I think Denny O'Neil, you'll hear them say Raz Al Ghul. And I hate that they even corrected it in Batman Beyond. Like they used to call, they made some point about, Raz was just a mispronunciation. It's Raish. No, it's not Raish. It's Raz Al Ghul. Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams created him. And that's what they said. It's not Raish. It's Raz Al Ghul. Anyway, here. I'm thinking, okay, cool. We're going to get some stuff with Batman and Raz Al Ghul. But let's put a pin in it. Let's talk about the jokes on me, the Clockwork Killer. One thing I don't understand is, why does there got to be 3 writers? Just let Jeff Johns do what he does. I mean, if Dan Didio would have left Jeff Johns alone and would have just kind of stayed away, I believe Rebirth would have made more sense in the grand scheme, because that's what the whole thing with Doomsday Clock was to kind of explain how Doc Manhattan changed the New 52 and how they were leading back to a more exploring the core fundamentals of our heroes. But then they got excited about more events and metal happened, which I love metal. Death metal was fun, but we're not going to get into that. But it got convoluted again. So here we are leading into another rebirth because of convolutedness. So Jeff Johns, Tim Sheridan, and Jeremy Adams writers. Zermanico and Mikel Yannon artists. Romulo Fajardo Jr. and Jordi Belair colorists, and Rob Lay letterer. There's everyone else working on the book with, of course, the 9,000 covers. Blah, 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 blah. So first we get Raz asking about Damian. And I like how Batman says, you should know. You always closely watch your enemies. You mean family. Family's what matters, Bruce. That's why we both committed our lives to making the world better. And so there's these ashes, which he says they're the ashes of Thomas Wayne from the other universe. And you're just kind of, wait, what? And we kind of get into the whole thing more about the Time Masters. I don't care. And then we shoot back into the Flashpoint universe with Thomas Wayne. I'm thinking, okay, this is awesome. We get Thomas here rushing to Arkham Asylum. And you come to find out that Oswald Cobblepot's kind of like his new Alfred, which is really neat. She's like, boss, you hearing me? What do you want, Oswald? Dexter went to Arkham to break out his mom, but you got to keep him away from her. The priority is Martha, Oswald. You don't understand. I read the files on Gilda, the ones Judge Dent sealed. Sealed. There are 2 faces to Gilda, Thomas. Judge Dent hid his wife's dark side, covered up her crimes against her own children. So it was kind of interesting in this universe. You're like, oh, that's kind of cool that they made Gilda Two-Face, as where you remember, even though the events of Batman the Long Halloween, where Gilda did do some, she was the holiday killer. She was forgiven essentially because of the life that she had. I can't remember everything that happened in the Long Halloween, but she had no repercussions of her actions. Batman let her go. And Harvey still went on to be Two-Face. So in this universe, you kind of see that Harvey's more, not the straight and narrow, obviously, but the way he loves his wife and is trying to protect her, and she becomes Two-Face, that kind of stuff is interesting. Like, okay, this is going to be cool. And then we get to Arkham, and we see that they're talking to the Joker. And if you guys didn't read the original Flashpoint Batman, you find out that Martha Wayne becomes the Joker after the death of her son. And, of course, Thomas becomes Batman. But here, because of all this time stuff happening, they know that there's another universe. They know that Bruce is alive, yada, yada, yada. And then Gilda as Two-Face just looks absolutely terrifying. But before we can even focus on this story, this is the story I want to read. We get more into time stuff. As you see Thomas smashing into Arkham Asylum. We kind of see all the remnants of the original Earth. We see a lot of the death in the family, about the death of Jason Todd, etc., so forth, which in itself is a beautiful splash page. But we don't lead more into it. We just see that Thomas is confronting Martha, and you find out that she's the time killer, which I guess has been one of the big things about this book. I don't give a damn. And at this point, we get no more with Dexter and his mom. That's kind of it. Ah! It's like being given a steak. You're like, and someone says, oh, you know what? We're going to save this for later. Here's a hot dog. Shit. Because what happens is all of a sudden we have to focus again on the time stuff. And so we get a lot of back and forth about how Martha's built the time machine. She wants to go back and save her son. Yada, yada, yada. I don't care, and I don't care. But what really, what really led me to buy this book, let me see if I can find it. I bet you 10-1 and I've skipped it. Yep, I skipped it. Gotta go back. And we gotta go back because there's something else I want to point out that was really cool. Hold on. Where the hell is it? It's like I knows that I'm trying to do a review and it's making me look like an asshole. Here it is. Okay. So she says that, where is it? I've been wondering about that myself. Ever since the man with the gold mask was talking about Bruce. I heard him while I hid within these walls. I made him tell me everything before I killed him. How this world has changed from what it should be. How Bruce became Batman, not you. And the Joker. Can you imagine? The Joker was a man. Right here, spoiler alerts. If you guys don't want to be spoiled, pause this review, go pick up the book, read it, and come back. And you're back. You've been warned. His name is Jack Oswald White. I bought this because they said that it's supposed to reveal the Joker's real name. I don't know if this is supposed to become canon. Because for all of us through all the years, they have referred to the Joker as Jack. But we've all always, they've always been very ambiguous. DC's always been very ambiguous about it. So we've all always associated from the 89 Batman, it's Jack Napier. And all of our headcanon, it will always be Jack Napier. Jack Oswald White. What were they thinking? They should have just went with Jack Napier. And then we kind of get a scene with the Joker with his family. And I do appreciate from this that Johns kind of follows up with what he was touching on in the Three Jokers, about how Bruce Batman says that the Joker's name doesn't matter even though he knows it. What matters is what the Joker does and how he needs to stop him. But he says the Joker's name's never been important. But yet, here it is, revealed. And then the book ends with more time shenanigans. I don't care. This book, like the Flashpoint stuff, would have been excellent. Or hell, even if we didn't get into that, if we would have just stuck with Raz Al Ghul and Batman, that would have been cool. Too much happening. More books you have to read in order to understand this book. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you're a first-time reader, you should be able to pick up a book and feel somewhat comfortable and secure, and not like you're taking some big bite of a huge, decades-old sandwich. You should be able to say, okay, this is Batman, da-da-da-da-da. Not, I need to know what Time Lords are, I need to know what Crisis on Infinite Earths is, I need to know what Infinite Crisis was, I need to know what Infinite Frontier was, I need to know what Dark Knight's Metal was, I need to know what Metal was, I need to know what the Year of the Villain was, I need to know Perpetua and the Source Wall. There it is. The Source Wall is, and have to go back and read Scott Snyder's Justice League run, and got to know what Jarro is from that. And that's not how comics should work. When I initially picked up a Batman comic at a grocery store, it was kind of a one-off issue because it was leading into Nightfall. But you got the idea. Batman is overwhelmed. He was worn out. He's getting worn out trying to fight all these villains. And after that, as you continued reading, you were safe and secure. And, you know, they would make references and you'd be like, okay, well, this is Bane. Where did Bane come from? And you'd eventually be able to go back and find that first one shot that Chuck Dixon did. Stuff like that. This is ridiculous. Though I will say, and this is the other thing I want to say that was cool, is in this little page, if you can barely read it here, but it essentially says, to the great master, or something like that, Neil Adams. It's better to read on a computer screen than here, but I appreciate that they gave a nod to Neil Adams right there. That was really sweet. But this book, other than the Joker's name being revealed, was just a nothing burger for me, and I am highly disappointed. I was hoping to read more about Flashpoint Batman, but instead, time travel, omniverse, multiverse, don't care. I don't care. Hopefully, with this reboot to and right here, okay, that was the last thing I wanted to talk about. Just bear with me. Have you guys noticed that since Flashpoint, maybe after, before or after New 52, how often we've seen soft reboots? Not super hard reboots, like Rebirth happened, but then after that, how many soft reboots we've kind of started to see of books. And it's starting to get a little silly, like they can't keep the momentum, so they try to keep soft rebooting lines to get people interested, and I don't know what's going on in their heads. We're just about to lead into another reboot, and I gotta say, I don't know if I really care anymore. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. If you've enjoyed what you've read, or you're just curious, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and pick up this book. If you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. It helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little bat bell next to subscribe, that way so we can continue to upload content, you guys get notified, come to the channel, and we love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below, or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.